Welcome to Rosslyn Hill Chapel, a Unitarian spiritual community here in Hampstead, North London. My name is Reverend Kate Dean and I'm proud to serve as the minister for this wonderful and creative community. We call it a spiritual home for open minds. Today is a celebration of the unique qualities of each individual in our chapel community, and we also consider how we can send our compassion out into the world. Around this time of year, we usually honour each other by giving and receiving flowers, a flower communion. This ritual was originally created by Reverend Dr. Norbert Čapek in the years of the Czechoslovak Republic before the Second World War. He was a former Baptist minister and journalist who founded the Unitarian Church in Prague in 1921. As we join in fellowship with many other Unitarian congregations who are also holding virtual flower communions this month in a variety of different ways, we'll reflect on the ways to practice compassion in our relationships with each other and with the world. I light our chalice as the symbol of our liberal religious faith. May this flame be as the light of knowledge in our minds and the warmth of love in our hearts. I will now light some small candles to symbolise our joys and concerns, and you may like to take this time now to reflect on your own joys and concerns. I also light a candle of hope for us all. This is a story about the flowers in the garden. Now, all the flowers were having a conversation and they just trying to work out who was the best flower in the garden. They were arguing over who was really the best, most beautiful, most wonderful flower. And the roses said, "We are the best flowers because we bloom in the spring." And the white daisies said, "Oh no, we are the best because we have pretty flowers all summer long." And the big yellow chrysanthemums said, "Oh, don't be silly. We are the best because we are the last flower to bloom in the autumn." Well, the gardener came along and he noticed all the different beautiful flowers and he picked them all to make a wonderful display in a vase on his kitchen table. He said, "I have the prettiest bouquet of flowers. Each flower alone is beautiful, but together they make the perfect bouquet." Our shared reading today is given by members of our worship group, James, Sally and Margaret. It is a mashup of 3 different sources. The prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, which begins, "Make me an instrument of your peace," is well known in the Christian tradition. The Bodhisattva prayer on compassion and suffering comes from the Buddhist tradition. And the third source is an English translation of Plegaras, a song by the Costa Rican artist Luis Angel Castro.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace.
May I be a protector to those who need protection.
I would like to have the force of thunder to silence those who preach death.
Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon.
A leader for those who journey.
I would like to be the rain to put out the flames left by war in hundreds of towns and peoples.
Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope.
And a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore.
To become winds, hurricanes, to erase from the earth all of the borders and the fences that divide embraces.
Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy.
May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away.
Would that I were wheat, that I might pass myself out as bread among the hungry who walk your streets.
O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console.
May I be the doctor and the medicine.
I would like to have the wings of a seagull.
To be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love.
And may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed.
And soar over the sea as the afternoon sun sets. What would happen if I were an enormous elephant and trampled all the tractors that robbed me of my forests?
For it is in giving that we receive.
May I always support the life of all the boundless creatures.
Yet, I am only one human being.
It is in pardoning that we are pardoned.
Just like space and the great elements such as earth, and until they pass away from pain.
And I don't think that's enough.
And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life.
May I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings.
But millions of people are coming, singing. Millions of people.
That reach unto the ends of space.
I swear they are on their way.
Our story for all ages tells of a group of flowers all jostling to be judged the best in the garden. And yet when they are brought together, that is when they make the most beautiful bouquet. If we are to spread compassion into the world, we need to recognise our individual gifts and the astonishing riches that come from welcoming diverse backgrounds into our community. William Wordsworth, reclining in some idyllic grove somewhere in the 1700s, was moved to write these wonderful lines. Through primrose tufts, in the green bower, the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and 'tis my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. Every flower enjoying the air that it breathes. If we can pause in a summer garden or walk on the heath, we can see the flowers nodding away in the sunshine. The breath of life unites us with all living things, breathing in their own special way. On a human level, in our disparate communities, in society, it is one thing that we all have in common. In the current climate, where political debate can become increasingly polarised, opportunities to come together with a shared goal are to be cherished. As the late Member of Parliament Joe Cox put it, we have more that unites us than divides us. Norbert Čapek held the same view when he worked to welcome people from different religious backgrounds into his flock, Protestant, Catholic and Jewish. His motivation was to celebrate the communion, the coming together of his religious community in a way that would be acceptable to members of his church. So he turned to the beauty of the natural world to find an alternative to the bread and wine communion in the Christian tradition. He created a flower communion. Reverend John Midgley, a Unitarian minister, writes of Čapek that he originated in Radomyšl, a small village in the southern part of what was then Bohemia and is now the Czech Republic. He came from a poor family, and after leaving school, he trained as a tailor. But his great love was religion, religious ideas, and church communities. He was converted to the Baptist Church and eventually trained as a Baptist minister. His ministerial work was successful, but under the influence of various teachers and writers, he became more and more convinced that Christianity should have a distinctly social message, that God was to be regarded as a parent of the human family. The human Jesus was our elder brother, and that our task was to create a new and better society for everyone. While he was studying for his PhD in New York, Čapek met his future wife, Czech-born Maya. It was she who urged him to leave the Baptist ministry and turn to Unitarianism. The Čapeks returned to Czechoslovakia in 1921 and established the dynamic liberal church in Prague. Maya Čapek was ordained in 1926. The first flower communions were held and people were asked to bring a flower of their choice, either from their garden or from the field or nearby roadside. The flowers were blessed and each person took a different flower home. At the beginning of the Second World War, Čapek was able to welcome a number of Jews as members of his church because of the monotheistic beliefs of Unitarians and Jews. This gave them precious extra time to plan their escape from the country, and without his compassion, they would have been rounded up by the Gestapo. As Unitarian Universalist Reginald Zottoli puts it, when the Nazis took control of Prague in 1940, they found Dr. Čapek's gospel of the inherent worth and beauty of the person to be, as the Nazi court records show, too dangerous to the Reich for him to be allowed to live. Dr. Čapek was sent to Dachau, where he was killed the next year during a Nazi medical experiment. This gentle man suffered a cruel death, but his message of human hope and decency lives on through his flower communion. This ritual was taken to America by his wife Maya and spread among Unitarians and Unitarian Universalist communities throughout the world, a lasting legacy of Norbert Čapek. The flower communion is symbolic for us because no two flowers are alike. No two people are alike, yet each has a contribution to make. Together, the different flowers can form a beautiful bouquet. And the common bouquet of our community would not be the same without the unique gifts and talents of each individual. The poet Henry Vaughan paints an image of heaven and addresses God as peace. In this eternal heaven lies the flower of peace, the rose that never fades. He writes, "There grows the flower of peace, the rose that cannot wither, thy fortress and thy ease. Leave then thy foolish ranges, for none can thee secure, but one who never changes, thy God, thy life, thy cure." In pre-Christian Rome, the rose was a symbol of the goddess of love and prosperity and beauty, and this symbolism evolved in early Christianity to signify the Virgin Mary. It is one reason why rosary beads are often traditionally made from crushed rose petals. There grows the flower of peace, the rose that cannot wither. The ritual of prayer and incantation with prayer beads crosses many cultures and religions. And rituals like the flower communion service are events that we can return to each year, familiar touchstones to mark the passing of the seasons, something to hold on to when everything else seems up in the air. And there's something very comforting in the knowledge that it is shared with other Unitarian congregations. We Unitarians have very few rituals, therefore those that we do celebrate have become very dear to us. It is especially difficult for some of us not to be able to take part in the flower communion together this year, because this beautiful ritual is a celebration of our community, our common humanity, individual gifts and diverse beliefs. But we can be inspired by Charpek's compassion for those in his community, which he tried to help and ultimately gave his life to defend. We may not face such stark choices in our own lives, but it is up to us all to do what we can to challenge injustice and practice compassion in the different circumstances that we find ourselves in. Our compassion for the world may start with members of our family, our neighbours and our community. And perhaps this is all we can hope to achieve, each of us working in our own small way. But there are times when we need to reach out further, challenge ourselves to step into another's shoes in order to work out the best way to help them. True compassion comes from an effort to understand the other person. I've spoken at services before about what some have called the platinum rule. It is one level higher than the golden rule, which states that we should treat others as we would wish to be treated. The platinum rule states that we should treat others as they would wish to be treated. Now, this can be a very difficult thing to do, especially if you realise that you don't really know how they want to be treated. We can be open about that, not assuming that we know, but asking the person, what help do you really need? Standing in another's shoes, understanding their point of view and showing true empathy towards them and their situation can work. But we also need to have the courage to admit when we don't understand. This week, many of our community joined in an online discussion about racism and white privilege. It was an opportunity to speak openly about a very uncomfortable subject, to reflect on the impact of recent anti-racism protests, and try to come to a compassionate understanding in order to move forward. It was hard work, but I think very worthwhile effort, which I hope will continue. Our open-hearted discussions enabled people to share personal stories of racism and ignorance, and to ask some uncomfortable questions about systemic racism and the often unacknowledged privileges that white people have over others in our society. Now, you won't be surprised to hear that I'll be returning to this subject in a couple of weeks' time. What struck me was the painful shift for many when the penny dropped and the realization of history's impact became apparent. Our society may be a glorious bouquet of diversity, but some of the blooms are being smothered by others, and some of them are sucking up all the water. On our Unitarian journey of compassion, we are free to draw wisdom from many sources. In our shared reading earlier, the Unitarian Universalist minister Karen Johnson entwines strands of Christian, Buddhist, and secular poetic words. Within it, I heard a call to keep peace in our hearts, even as we strive to tackle suffering in the world. Norbert Čapek attempted to do this through his preaching and creativity, and his compassionate action. He wrote lyrics for more than 90 hymns, and he often composed the music too. He had a strong sense of the mystery of God, which he expressed in his poetry. One of his hymns appears in our green hymnal, Hymns for Living, so I'll end with these words, which you may remember singing in previous services. Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, where are you? In the sky song, in the forest sounds your cry. What to give you, what to call you, what am I? Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, take our hearts, take our breath and let our voices sing our parts. Take our hands and let us work to shape our art. Amen. In our usual flower communion, each person would bring a flower and they would be collected up into a wonderful bouquet by our children. We would then all shower the flowers with blessings and then each take a different flower home with us. Today, instead, we share words by Norbert Čapek and photos of some of our chapel members with their flowers. Now let us meditate on the beauty of nature with a prayer written by Dr. Čapek, a prayer for the flowers. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these, thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts, to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship, but may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world. May it be so. Amen. In the name of Providence, which implants in the seed the future of the tree, and in the hearts of men and women the longing for people living in human love. In the name of the highest, in whom we move, and who makes the mother and father, the brother and sister, what they are. In the name of sages and great religious leaders, who sacrificed their lives to hasten the coming of peace and justice. Let us renew our resolution, sincerely to be brothers and sisters, regardless of any kind of bar which estranges one from another. In this holy resolution, may we be strengthened, knowing that we are God's family, that one Spirit, the Spirit of love, unites us, and may we endeavour for a more perfect and more joyful life. Amen. May this occasion remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and gifts, to be one in desire and affection, and devotion to what is of highest worth. May these flowers in our minds and in our gardens also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of the most precious gifts in the world. Blessed be, and Amen.